think we're ready to go. All right. Welcome everybody to the PD Party. Today's session is all about engagement strategies. And for those of you who would like to follow along or who would like the links to go back to our short link, which is not totally short, but it's go.ncdpi.gov/PD Party. Jen, I apologize. I should have made you a Google Doc with copy and paste stuff, but if you would, drop that link into the chat, I would be eternally grateful. If you want to snap a picture of it, if you just want to sit back and listen, you can.
Beat me.
He is very fast. He's very fast. So you're welcome to, if you joined us for Jen's very first session on coaching, all about slide smarter, not harder, she invited you to just sit back and listen and enjoy. I'm going to do the same thing because you can always come back to the presentation later. Let's see if it will let me go to the next slide. Yes. All right. So I am your presenter today. My name is Lauren Boucher. I am the Southeast Digital Teaching and Learning Consultant for NCDPI's Office of Digital Teaching and Learning. That's a mouthful. This is just a little bit about me. I am a born and bred ECU Pirate. Go Pirates. I have presented at multiple local, state, and national conferences, and I love all things Google, all things AI, including CurryPod and Canva. So I wanted to get started today by doing a little bit of an activating strategy, understanding that you all are coaches and that you come to this session today with a history as a coach. And so what I would invite you to do, you can do this in the chat or you can do it in the Padlet, just by clicking on the Padlet here, is when you first started designing or facilitating PD, which strategies did you use that were effective? And what are some strategies that maybe weren't as effective? So when you open up this Padlet, I'm probably really getting ready to mess myself up. You'll notice that the first two columns here are effective strategies and ineffective strategies. I will go ahead and grab this link and put it in the chat as well. Oh, Brian already did that too. Thank you, Brian. So take a second. If you are willing and you would like to unmute to tell us what is something that was effective or something not so effective, feel free to do that. We'll give you just a minute. So when you open up the Padlet to add a new post, you can simply click the plus button underneath the heading here, and it will add it adds top to bottom. So whatever was added last is going to go to the bottom. Did I share this correctly? Jen, can you access? Not seeing a plus button. This happened to us.
Change it to writer and then refresh it. And then they may be able to do the plus under this.
All right. Michelle and Amy, did that give you, if you refresh it, did that give you a plus? That worked. Perfect. Yay! All right. So again, feel free to unmute if you want to talk to me and tell me what is a really effective strategy that you have used in the past. Icebreakers. You can also, if somebody says something that you were thinking, you can give it a little like, and then we can see that as well. Give you about another 30 seconds to get your ideas down. You can also add it to the chat. Too much sit and get. I am with you, whoever said I talk too much. I can sit here and talk to you all day long, which, you know, Jen cautioned in the previous presentation. Ground rules, love it. We'll talk a little bit about that today. Candy, yes, food is one of our basic needs. And when our basic needs are not being met, we can't learn. So food and candy is always a great option. One size fits all. Absolutely. All right, y'all continue to add your ideas there. We're going to come back at the end and do a little bit more reflecting, but I'm going to keep moving. Let's go back to full screen here. Maybe. All right, so last year, I think it was maybe around June, I jumped onto social media and asked a question that I really wanted some feedback from actual teachers on. And I asked, like, my post was, why does PD suck? And I've never had a post go viral on social media. This one did. Like, it, for me, blew up. I got all kinds of comments and threads that went off all different directions. And so this is why teachers do not enjoy coming to PD. And one of the first, I thought it was funny, somebody said icebreakers is an effective strategy, because a lot of them said that they hate icebreakers. They also had a big problem with people who did not establish their authority and their like street cred almost. So if you haven't been in the classroom in a while, you know, what really do you have to offer me? Not differentiated, not authentic, ask us to sit for too long. PD is given after school, after contract hours, so they're not getting paid. Sometimes as coaches, we don't have the ability to schedule when our sessions are, but I think being mindful about, you know, going beyond a teacher's contracted time, I think shows that you do see them and hear their concerns and you respect them for that. Never any time to reflect or consider how to use the new information for my specific content, my specific classroom. Again, non-differentiated. So some of the things that are addressed here, and I'm going to show this on the next slide, but the anchor text that we're going to be using today, yay, Jen's got hers too, is the PD book by Elena Aguilar. Everything from today comes from this book. It is super amazing. Lots and lots of suggestions and real life scenarios. So it's very valuable. But one thing on page 81, and I tried my best that if I talked about something that was on a specific page to include that page on the slide. So this comes from the tips and tricks box on page 81 and addresses this idea of icebreakers, because some people love them, some people hate them. I'm in the I don't really enjoy them because, again, I'm an introvert and so they make me uncomfortable. But she recommends to keep your silly activities or icebreakers or things like that short and always relate them back to your purpose. So, and then being very explicit about how that activity links directly back to your PD purpose, which we're going to talk about today. So that was just a quick tip that I thought was really kind of fit this feedback about these unrelated activities that are kind of, we throw in, we know why they're important. We know that icebreakers get people in the mood to communicate and collaborate with one another and kind of set the tone for learning. Not everybody gets that or appreciates that. So again, here's the book that everything is coming from today, the PD book, 7 Habits That Transform Professional Development. We are not going to have time to cover all 7 today. I'm going to get through as much as I can. And then towards the end, I'm going to provide you with some specific resources that have specific strategies and specific activities that you'll be able to explore. So what we really wanted to share with you today is the fact that, you know, there is what PD should be and what PD shouldn't be. And everything that was listed on that social media response of why does PD suck is on the shouldn't be. So the focus of this session and the focus of the book is this idea of transformative professional development. So keep that word transformative in mind as we're going through this, because there are lots of things that we want to transform about professional development. So PD should be this process in which learners are actively engaged and for which the aim is to explore and expand behaviors, beliefs, and ways of being. If you were able to join us in Greensboro in January for the Coaching Collaborative, we really dug into the idea of, we all have these behaviors that are based on our beliefs and our ways of being. And so that is in Elena Aguilar's other book, Arise, which is I have somewhere. But those are the three things that we are trying to transform in the educators that we are working with in PD. So changing a behavior, changing a belief or a way of being, that then results in a change of practice. All right, I'm making sure I'm not missing any of my notes here. So on page 11 of the PD book, there is a really great table. And so the table describes what professional development is and what it isn't, or what it should be and what it shouldn't be. And I know that I have done this with several different groups of teachers. And one thing that always gets the most discussion is the fact that PD should be required for everyone because we all need to learn and grow. I fully believe that. I'm sure as a coach you fully believe that. But when we require anything, that tends to bring out emotions in people. And emotions is definitely something that is addressed in both Arise and the PD book as something that is innately human and something that we should recognize. So again, the goal of transformative professional development is a change in behavior, a change in practice of some way, but recognizing that that is an emotional process for somebody, especially if they're being told they have to do it. So as a coach, we need to be cognizant of those emotions, help our teachers recognize that that is an emotion, validate that emotion, and then figure out a way to move past that. And Elena has tons and tons of suggestions on how to do that. This is all about a PD party, and this is actually an acronym that Elena uses to describe 5 kind of rules to follow, habits, ways of being, almost things to attend to as a coach who is designing professional development to make it transformative. And so if you can remember the word party, P is for purpose, which is what we're going to start with today. A is attending to your audience, their needs, their histories, the power dynamics that might be present, and all that goes along with that. And then understanding, we're going to do a little bit of an introduction to andragogy, which is adult learning theory. We're going to do a whole hour on that in March, but we're going to hit on a little bit today. Next is routines. So this gets into like the meat of designing your sessions, as well as technique, so the strategies that you're going to use, and then you as a presenter, knowing who you are as a presenter and who you want to be as a presenter, and then making that happen. We're not going to focus a whole lot on this, but I think my 2025 word of the year is identity. I'm going to be doing a lot of work on myself on identity and things like that. And one way that I identify myself is as a coach, is as a professional development designer and facilitator. So spending time to think about who you want to be and what you want to show to your outward audience is good to take a little bit of time to reflect on that. So that you can really put your personality into what it is that you're sharing with your teachers. So let's start with the 7 habits. So she mentioned, like I said, 7 habits of professional development, and these are it. So we're going to start with purpose. The next is that idea of engaging emotions. Remember, emotions are completely human. We all have them. We should recognize and validate, and then figure out how to move on from those. The next is navigating power. Then we have anchoring in adult learning principles, designing intentionally, attending to details, and then facilitating adaptively. I was in sessions today with Jones County, and we talked about this idea of fluid has been the word since 2020. We know as educators and as coaches, we always have to be willing to move with the moment and adjust as we need. A lot of times we call this reading the room. Something that Jen and I did in January, weather was an issue, and we recognized that there were a lot of emotions going on. People not wanting to be away from home and their kids when we never get snow, people concerned about driving in it. So we made the executive decision to end early because we knew that our people, they were not able to attend to the learning because there were so many other emotions and concerns going on. So when we're talking about determining purpose, obviously when we're talking about the PARTY acronym that goes along with purpose, engaging our emotions, that is all about attending to our audience. So that would be the audience piece. Navigating power, that's also a part of your audience and attending to their needs. When we're talking about anchoring in adult learning principles and designing intentionally, that is all under routines. So what are your favorite strategies? What are your go-tos that you can rely on that have been proven to be successful over time? And then attending to details and facilitating adaptively all falls under the technique. And then you wrap it up in a nice, neat bow or balloon string since it's a party. So yeah, those are your 7 habits that you will learn about going through the PD book. So let's start with purpose. I learned this strategy from the PD book, and I absolutely love it. So Elena calls it the 5 whys. So your 5 whys to purpose, and I hand wrote it so that you could see my process here. So I started with, okay, what is the purpose of this webinar? And I said to provide coaches with the info and strategies they need to ensure that teachers get the most from their time spent in PD. And then you ask yourself, but why? But why? But why? And you do that 5 times until you've done it and you get down to the heart of what is really your purpose. So through that process, I came up with that my purpose is to provide coaches the tools and strategies to design purpose-driven, relevant, and engaging PD that teachers will buy into and learn from, and that will inspire them to transform their teaching and the student learning experience. And then because I'm an AI nerd, I put it into Chat GPT and said, please make this more concise and clear. And it did a great job. Same message, same purpose. But I really, really do love the 5 whys. I think it really helps us to drill down to get to the heart of what it is. And so with purpose, I actually learned this from another book that Jen and I read, The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. That's another really, really great book that probably should be on any coach's bookshelf. But I love this quote, let purpose be your bouncer. And so what she means by that is when you are figuring out who needs to come to your session based on your purpose, if it's somebody who you know already has that information, unless it is a required training that administration is requiring everybody to be at, let purpose be your bouncer. Only invite the people who need to hear it. That was something else that came through in that social media post was, hey, I'm a PE teacher, and I have to sit through all of this ELA reading training that doesn't pertain to me, but the other teachers never have to come to my PE training. It's not fair. So using purpose as your bouncer for your audience, but also your activities. Think about those icebreakers. If you can't relate the purpose of that icebreaker back to the overall purpose of your session, it's got to go. We have to align everything to our purpose. That's at that top of that party acronym. So when we're talking about a bouncer, we're talking about audience, we're talking about activities, we're also talking about content. This is, Jen, I'm going to refer back to her presentation from last week on Slide Smarter, Not Harder. She talked about the idea of, brainstorming everything that you want and can say about your topic, but then whittling it down to the most important. I think having your purpose set and really defined will allow you to let that be your bouncer and to throw out some of that content that might not be as important. Remember, time is something that is finite, that we can't get back, and we want to respect as much as possible the time that our teachers are giving to us, especially if it's after school and after contracted hours. So what are the steps to actually creating a plan and creating an outline for our PD that is embedded in that purpose? And the steps that she lays out, to me, are the steps to backwards design. If you are familiar with backwards design, this is it. So we're going to start with what we want the outcomes of our participants to be. So based on our purpose, what does a successful teacher look like who's leaving my session? Next, identify any gaps. And again, this comes from pages 32 through 37, but identify the gaps in learning that might be there, the gaps in skills, and go ahead and plan for that. This is essentially planning for differentiation for your teachers, which models what we want to see in the classroom, right? So by identifying any gaps that might be there, you are, again, aligning to your purpose, because our goal of transformative PD is to change a behavior. If there's a gap in learning or a gap in skill or ability, we're going to have to close that gap before we can see the change that we actually want to see. Step number 3 would be to brainstorm possible activities, whether that's to fill those gaps or to create the learning that our teachers need in order to see that change. And then step 4, prioritize those topics. So again, going back to Slide Smarter, Not Harder, and our purpose, drilling it down to the most important topics and then prioritizing those most important to least important is a very, very simple way of planning with purpose in mind. Next, this is one of the 7 habits, know your audience. This was also the second letter in the party acronym, audience. And there's 2 things that I want to share with you about audience. So the first thing is whenever you are presenting or facilitating to an audience, you're going to have one of these 5 groups represented in some ratio or proportion. And as we're going through this, you can probably, I know faces started popping into my head. Faces might start popping into your head as well. But you're going to have the friendly people, the ones who are there, they want to be there, and they just want to learn. So as a facilitator, as a designer of professional development, in order to reach that group, the goal is going to be to reinforce their beliefs that the work that we're doing is important and relate it back always to your purpose. Then you're going to have the people who are neutral. They're like, take it or leave it. I'm good. For them, the goal is to convince them that what you are actually trying to share with them is going to affect them and their students in some kind of blah, 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 positive way. Then you have the hostiles. And I was sharing with Brian and Jen before the session. I've got, definitely in the past have worked with some very hostile teachers. So for that group, your goal is to respect their point of view. They are adults. They're people just like you. They have reasons why they feel and believe as they do. Again, going back to those emotions, engaging the emotions. But your goal is to respect them while still introducing the new information, but being prepared for the arguments that they're going to make and already having your response ready to go. And a response that is respectful but firm, and you can always go back to your purpose. That purpose is the foundation of everything, which is why it's so important to take the time and why I love that 5 whys strategy, because it really does allow you to embed that all the way through. Then you've got the uninformed people. These are the ones who come to you and they've never heard of what you're getting ready to share. And, they're just along for the ride. So the goal for those people in your audience is to inform them only of what they need to know before asking them to buy into your idea. So these are the people who really just want the facts before you try to make the sales pitch. And then you've got the experts. This is you. This is people who already are invested in the content. They're invested in what is going to be shared. They're there to learn even more, because knowledge is power to you. You are the expert because you go off on your own and do your own research. You do book studies, you read blogs and watch YouTube videos and follow other coaches on social media. So for you, the goal is to give you something new, a new perspective or a common problem to solve. And so our problem that we're trying to solve today is engagement. And so we're hopefully getting to engagement through the use of these 7 habits and the PARTY acronym. If you have ever done anything with me, I try to bring in True Colors, because True Colors has truly made a huge difference in my life. I've told the story many, many times that when and I'm not telling any secrets, Beth, if she was here, would totally agree with anything I'm getting ready to say. So before coming to DPI, I was an instructional technology facilitator with Pitt County Schools. It was me and one other coach for 40 schools. We only had district coaches, and it was me and her. And if you've met Beth, you know that her and I could not be any more different. I am 100% type A. Everything needs to be nice, neat, and organized, planned ahead of time. And once we have the plan, we're sticking to the plan. We're not changing the plan, especially not 5 minutes before we're set to deliver it. Beth is 100% woohoo! We'll figure it out when we get there, and it's going to be amazing. So when we first started working together, we really did not get along. I didn't understand her. She didn't understand me. In 2017, I was able to go through NCDLCN, the North Carolina Digital Leaders Coaching Network, and learned about True Colors. And Brian, I think lovingly, but I'm not 100% sure, refers to me as 24 karat gold. I scored 4s on that personality test, all the way down gold. My secondary color is blue. Beth is 100% orange, and her secondary color is green. So you could see how before we studied this and learned how to use it with each other, it was interesting. But what you can do, knowing that you're going to have blues in your audience, golds in your audience, oranges and greens, is consider what each one of these groups needs to be successful. As a gold, I need an agenda. I need something that I can go back to refresh, because I'm also a nerd expert and I just want to learn everything. Blues are the ones who love the icebreakers because they get to interact with each other and build relationships. It's important to provide something for each one of the colors in your facilitation, in your outline, so that you are recognizing and appreciating and showing love to, Brian, showing love to all of the colors. So if True Colors is not something that you've ever explored, shoot me an email after the webinar and I'll be happy to share all my stuff with you. I love it. I can't get enough of it. So I have 4 specific strategies that are mentioned throughout the book. Again, there's lots and lots of strategies mentioned. These were just 4 that really stood out to me that, again, went with the purpose. And I'm sorry, I have my camera, the thing showing on my other screen, and I'm realizing how much I talk with my hands because all I see out of my periphery is my hands doing this. Sorry, it's very distracting. So strategy number 1 that we're going to talk about is communication, and communication is key. And so on pages 37 through 40, I really didn't want to just like read out loud to you, but again, I'm trying to be Jen and only have 6 words or less on the screen. So when we're talking about communication, there are 3 periods, and this is also, Jen, was also mentioned in The Art of Gathering. So communicating before, during, and after, because we really want to build up excitement for our professional development, because let's be real, not a lot of people get excited about professional development, but if we can kind of stoke that fire beforehand, during, and then providing information afterwards, our teachers are more likely to buy into what we're selling. So as far as before the PD, it is important to communicate your purpose. So that defining purpose is really the pre-work that should be done, because that should be shared before your teachers walk into the room to experience your PD. Also, if you are able, and I know that not all coaches are at one school, not all coaches are at 2 to 3 schools. So you may be that kind of professional development coach or trainer who's coming in and you only have the ability to do one and dones. But if you have the ability and you have relationships with these teachers, use that pre-PD communication to assess their learning. Whenever I get the chance, when I'm talking to teachers, I encourage them as much as possible to do a pre-assessment, because that can save you a lot of time if your audience already has some of the skills that you want to teach. You can save that time and change your priorities. Again, that backwards design, you can prioritize where their gaps and their needs are. Also, activate your audience's intrinsic motivation. So considering the principles of adult learning theory, which we're going to get to, how can you leverage those principles of agency and choice and need to learn? How can you leverage all of that to get them excited before they come? What teasers can you give them to make them excited to come? During the PD, make sure you frame it at the beginning, always coming back to your purpose and those intended outcomes. When your audience knows the goal and knows what the end result is going to be, they are more likely to dive in and sit in the learning with you. Again, communicating your purpose throughout your agenda. Anticipate questions or concerns. So this goes back to that second step of identifying the gaps. To me, this goes hand in hand. Anticipate what questions or concerns or kind of kickbacks you might get based on your content, and go ahead and have responses ready for that so you're not caught off guard. As someone, a facilitator who has been caught off guard and who, and this is me, but tends to take things personally, when I feel like I'm being questioned, I very quickly fall into an emotion cycle and start doubting myself. I start telling myself all kinds of stories that may or may not be true. So being prepared up front for any, negativity or anything like that that may come through, you are already prepared. You can say what you need to say and keep everything moving. After the PD, it's very important. I know we all do this, but to solicit feedback to ensure that you are, you know what worked, what didn't work, and so you can make shifts going forward as needed. So that's communication, strategy number 1. Strategy number 2, engaging emotions. This is, like I said, huge and something that takes a lot of practice, not to take things personally when people do kind of come at you, because teachers really quickly will come at you when they don't agree with you about something, because you're hitting on one of their emotions. So recognizing from the get-go that we all have emotions, we all experience them, that is a completely human thing, how to recognize them, validate them, and move on. And so she dedicates a whole chapter to this in the PD book. Chapter 2 is all about engaging in emotions. I did want to share with you, this also comes from Elena Aguilar. This is actually from another one of her books called Onward. As a coach, as a teacher, that is another book that I would I would 100% have on my shelf. The full title is Onward, Building Emotional Resiliency in Educators. It has been a game changer for me because, like I said, I do tend to take things personally. I do tend to, when something happens, automatically start telling myself a story when that may not necessarily be the case. So whenever we are triggered into an emotion cycle, this is the cycle that we go through. These are the steps that everyone goes through. So something happens and we immediately tell ourselves a story. So I go off the rails at step number 2. I mean, early on in the process, I'm out. Once we've told ourselves, our interpretation of what's going on, then your body probably has some physical response. I flush. If I know that something is coming ahead of time, I get very bad headaches and very bad stomach aches. So I very much so do have a physical response to stressful triggers. Then you have the urge to act. This is a lot of times where other people go off the rails. And so we have a knee-jerk reaction, and then we have to face, the consequences of that, good or bad. So there's the urge to act, then what we actually do, and then the after effects. So if you can stop yourself in the moment from telling stories that may or may not be true, and she even in the PD book recommends using the phrase, you know what, I'm recognizing that this is bringing up some strong emotions for me. Give me just a second to respond. And I think that is a very, very respectful way to model, even for your teachers, because our kids do the same thing to us in the classroom, to respond, how to respectfully say, you know what, I hear what you're saying. I respect the emotions and the feelings behind that, but it's bringing up emotions for me. Give me just a sec. And then you get yourself straight and you move on. Completely fine. So emotions are hard to deal with because they bring up our own emotions. And that's not something that we are taught how to handle, which is why, again, I cannot recommend the book Onward enough. If anything, the emotional piece is what has changed the most for me based on that. So strategy number 3 is anchoring in adult learning. And if you Google adult learning, there's a really fancy word for it. It's called andragogy. So pedagogy is teaching children strategies, andragogy, adult learning strategies. Depending on what source you read, there's anywhere from 5 to 8 kind of pillars or principles, whatever you have it. In the PD book, she gives us 7. And so a quote that really encapsulates this idea of adult learning is, adults need to be able to make choices about their learning. They need psychological safety, and they need to have their knowledge and experiences validated. I think remembering the fact that all adults, humans, period, come to us as a coach, as a facilitator, as a teacher with a history. Nobody comes to us as a blank slate. And I think the most powerful thing that we can do as a facilitator is to validate those experiences and recognize those. It just helps everybody feel seen. And when we feel seen, we are more likely to engage and be willing to play along, to play the game. So the 7 principles are: adults must feel safe to learn. So if a principal and a teacher don't have a good relationship, and the principal is sitting in your PD session, that teacher that doesn't have a good relationship is probably not going to feel safe enough to ask questions or to speak out or to share their thoughts and feelings. So recognizing power dynamics, and this is that's one of her strategies as well, recognizing and establishing, the power dynamics in the room helps everybody feel safe. Allowing people to ask questions without shutting them down. Yes, and is a very powerful phrase, rather than saying, no, that's not quite it. Yes, and then kind of guide them the way that you want them to go. The second one, adults come to learning experiences with histories, and we just talked about that. Recognizing and validating and honoring those histories and those experiences. Every kid at some point has asked a teacher, why do we have to learn this? Adults have the same question. Why do we have to learn this? I presented the same session 4 times today to 4 different groups of teachers during their planning periods, and every single group asked, why are we doing this again? So be prepared, again, grounded in your purpose, how to answer that question. Adults want agency in their learning. They want control. They want coaches and facilitators and administrators to recognize that they are adults and they are capable of being in charge of their own learning as well. So things like providing choice and voice and multiple pathways to learning will provide that agency that adults want. Practice. This was the AI image that was generated when I put in the principle that adults need to practice to learn. So if you think about learning a new dance, you're going to have to practice it multiple times. If you're teaching a new instructional strategy or a new framework, your teachers are going to need the time and the space to actually practice that and apply it before they become adept at it. So that's the whole idea of, and what we mean by job embedded, is allowing teachers to take what they're learning and apply it to their classroom with support from you and administration and each other to get feedback to become better and better. Adults have a problem-centered approach to learning. So when you can present something to them as a problem to be solved, or when you allow them to come to you with a problem to be solved, that really they feel like their learning has a purpose at that point, other than just to check a checkbox. So being able to, maybe within your purpose that you've drafted, share what problems can be solved with this strategy or with this session will really help them to buy in as well. Next, even though it might not sound like it sometimes or seem like it sometimes, adults really do want to learn. As humans, we are hardwired to learn. I think the issue, or one of the issues of today, is the fact that information is free. It is widely available. In fact, it is coming at us from all directions 24 hours a day. So providing the time and the space for our teachers to learn what they want to learn and the way that they want to learn it will get you more buy-in as well. So those were the 7 principles of adult learning. So attending to those. So thinking about those 7 strategies, what can you build into your time together and after, or even before your PD, what can you build in that will ensure several, if not all, of these principles can fit into your PD. Strategy number 4 is that attention to detail. So in the PARTY acronym, this really gets into your routines and your strategies. What was T? Technique. This is what your routines and your technique. This is all captured in chapters 5 and 6, but kind of really throughout the whole book. But chapters 5 and 6 is where you can really dig into attending to details. And so what details or what kind of buckets should you consider as you are, what details should you attend to? That is the context. So what is the context for learning? Where are your teachers? What grade level is it? What content is it? Considering all that. And then partnership. How can you partner with your learners, and how can you partner also with outside organizations? Sometimes it's better coming from somebody outside than inside. I can't explain why, but sometimes that just is. Thinking about your location. If you're going to have people up and moving, how should your space be set up? Is it at the school, or are teachers going to have to travel there? What specific resources are you offering? That communication, again, before, during, and after. What does your presentation look like? If you need to know, here's another plug for Jen Sessions, Slide Smarter, Not Harder. It is on our YouTube channel. And then closing. How are you going to wrap everything up? How can you provide that reflection time at the end for your participants to begin to process their learning and internalize their learning? So that's kind of everything from the book, and I have 10 minutes left. Woo! Okay, so what I did is I went through my toolkit that I continuously pull from when I am designing PD. These are specific strategies. I have to sneeze. Bless me. Sorry. Okay, so on the next slide, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Sorry, I was really hoping for more, but 5 minutes will give you the opportunity to look at one thing. So all of these will link to something except for the very first one. So norms and agreements. If you can get the group to agree to things like be on time, be present, be respectful to other learners, things like that. When things go sideways, you can always say, hey, we agreed that we weren't going to interrupt each other, or we agreed that this was going to be our sentence stem when we disagreed with somebody. So setting norms and agreements from the beginning, And I recommend doing this at the very beginning of the year if you're a coach at a specific school, because that can go across any meeting, any gathering that you were bringing teachers together to do. So the other tools that you can actually click on is the Adaptive Schools Moves, which are essentially protocols, collaborative planning protocols, thinking routines. This is from Project Zero, more protocols. HyperDocs, I love doing PD from a HyperDoc because everything is right there in one place. And if you use the templates from the HyperDocs website, it just guides you right through the learning process. Classroom Clue, Tic-Tac-Toe, and Choose Your Own Adventure are actual sessions that I have put together and done with teachers that allow for that agency and that choice and that voice. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to choose one of these. All 3 of these came from my favorite resource to find activities, which is Ditch That Textbook. And so this link will actually take you to a whole section on PD strategies that Matt Miller has put together. So 5 minutes, I'm going to stop talking because I have talked a long time and super fast and super a lot. Take some time to look at one, and then we'll come back together. 5 minutes. So there's about 2 minutes left on the timer. So as our last minute winds down, I do want to remind everybody that this presentation, the 3 presentations that are listed on this slide, since they were created by a state employee, they are actually public domain, so they belong to you. So feel free to take these, make a copy, and make them your own, edit however you see fit. Use as much as possible. So I did want to remind everybody of that. That's some more gifts that you get to take with you today. I have also put into the chat, if you want more resources from Elena Aguilar's website, Bright Morning, based on the PD book, I have linked to that website in the chat. There's some great podcast episodes there, as well as some printables and other things like that. So the last few minutes of the presentation, we're going to wrap up by talking about you. So this is that last part of the party acronym, and I pretty much have already said what I wanted to say, which is that taking the time to identify who you are as a presenter, what is your presentation style, what really do you have to bring, like what do you have to offer, and how can you enhance that and show that and bring your personality to your design and facilitation of PD. that may go back to like using humor, basing it on true colors, using the adaptive schools moves or things like that that you always have ready and that you go back to over and over and over again because you know that they work. So I want to take the last minute of our time together, unless you want to hang out for a few minutes, that's fine. Going back to the Padlet, and you can click on the stop sign right here to get back to the Padlet. Based on what you learned today, what is something as a PD designer or facilitator that you want to stop, that you want to start, and that you already do and you plan to continue based on what you learned today? So I would love your reflection time. Again, this was something that several people on social media responded that they wished they had more time for. I told Jen I was worried about putting too much in here, and here I am. I gave you only like 30 seconds to reflect. But if you decide to take the time now, great. If not, if you want to do this on your own, because reflection can be a very personal process that you don't necessarily want to share with everybody. I totally get that as well. But if you would at least tell us what you want to start and continue, I think that would be some really great information that we would all love to have from everybody. So to wrap up, I want to wrap up with knowing your impact. And so this goes back to communication after the fact of collecting feedback, collecting evidence, following up with your educators, that stuff. And so I'm going to open it up for Q&A.